Hello and welcome to Azur Meta. If after this video you want to help support the channel, please check out my affiliate store at kit.co/AzurLaneMeta. Welcome back, guys, and today's Thursday. You know what that means. A day to mine while we wait for the server maintenance to end. In this video, I'll be taking a first look at all of the new ship's stats and skills from the new event upon the Shimmering Blue. This is a UR event with Shimakaze. However, before we get into that, there's a few things in the patch notes that I want to cover. First things first is there is a warning that there will be another UR ship from construction before the end of 2021. That's less than 3 months away. They said construction, so it shouldn't be a retrofit. However, they didn't say new, so it could be a Shinano rerun or her being added to the general build pool. Either way, we're getting another UR in construction before the end of the year, so keep that in mind as you are spending your cubes. Also, while Japan is getting a rerun of all the skins, we will not be getting that in the global server yet. We'll probably get something for Black Friday. Just take this as a break for your wallet. However, 11 previously exclusive skins will be coming permanently to the shop, as well as the new skins, including the one that's banned on Azur Lane Official's Discord. That reminds me to plug my own Discord server. You can join using the link in the description. We just hit 5,000 members. We're shooting for 7,000. It's a cool place to hang out and ask questions. Anyway, back to the patch notes. We get a newbie player event. Commanders under level 60 will get double the experience for the next month and a half. Great time to join or start an alt account. Finally, we are getting the buffs to destroyers that they talked about during the live stream, and so I'll go over them now because they're kind of important. All max limit break destroyers will get one of 3 effects. They only get one of 3. That is determined by the ship individually. Each destroyer gets a buff. Which ship gets which buff is a long video that's going to be for another time. But just note, one of 3 buffs is going to be coming to each destroyer and will probably change the meta a little bit. The first one is the number of gun attacks required to launch the all-out assault barrage will be cut in half. So destroyers will be able to launch twice as many all-out assaults in a battle as before, at least the ones that have this skill. The second version that a destroyer can get is when they launch their torpedoes, the angle in which they launch them at is reduced. This reduced spread can increase the damage that they deal. It's good for single target bosses and torpedo-based destroyers. The final skill that they could get is an enhancement value of the equipment that they have. So equipment gives some certain stats. Destroyers with this skill will actually boost the stats they get from their equipment. So those are the 3 skills. Each destroyer is going to get one of 3 of them. I assume number 1 is going to be for firepower destroyers, number 2 is going to be for torpedo-based destroyers, and number 3 is going to be for like support-based destroyers. So just keep a lookout for what your favorite destroyers got in their boost. Now, completely separate from the destroyer buff is the Torpedo Mount buffs. Since most destroyers are torpedo-based, this in effect will also buff destroyers the most. But this is based on Torpedo Mount, not based on the destroyer type. So all torpedoes are now going to have, during auto combat only, this doesn't apply to manual, the torpedoes, when within a certain range, will aim themselves at the proper target. That range differs based on the type of torpedo mount, so I assume we'll get some new stat for which torpedo mounts will have which ranges. So that will drastically increase the theoretical DPS of torpedoes, so they'll be less likely to miss. On top of that, there are going to be 3 types of buffs that torpedo mounts can get. These 3 buffs will be applied to certain torpedo mounts. Once again, not enough time for another video. However, there are 3 types. One increases the torpedo search range. That is what we talked about earlier, when the torpedoes will fire at a certain target if they are within range. Certain torp mounts will increase that range. A different enhancement may be widening the angle at which the torpedoes fire. This could be good in potential mob fleets or something. And the final enhancement is actually reducing that search range, but creating a shorter spread when the torpedoes are fired. This means the torpedoes will fire straight ahead more often, and when they do actually target an enemy, you'll be so close to it they're likely to hit. All of these are going to be on different mounts, and this completely changes up the torpedo meta. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that because that deserves its own video. Just keep in mind that the torpedo meta and the destroyer meta in large is going to change a lot after this update. That's fantastic news for someone like me who just plus 13 their rainbow torpedoes. and now might find that they are completely irrelevant. I don't know yet, but I'll save that for another video. You guys are here for the ship stats, so let's talk about those. All right, let's get started off with the UR, because that's what I'm most excited to read about. I know YouTube will punish me for not putting this at the end and dragging you guys through the whole video, but I'm going to put timestamps on this anyway to save you guys time, and I'm most excited to find out what Shimakaze does. All right, let's take a look at these stats. I'm assuming they are going to define destroyers in the future. Health is a little bit higher than a standard IJN torpedo ship. 602 torpedo stat. So the rumors are true. She did break the 600 barrier, making her the highest torpedo stat ship in the game. The rest of her stats all put her above average, actually probably in the top tier. Not best in any of it, but she is best in torpedoes. So this is a torpedo ship very clearly with the amount of torpedo stat she has. She's also pretty fast. 170% torpedo efficiency. Wow. Right off the bat, that's going to hit like a tank. I don't even know what the stats are, but 602 torpedo stat and 170 torpedo efficiency is going to hit like a tank. Oh my gosh, that's a double preloaded torpedo. She gets double preloaded. The only other ship in the game to do this is Ibuki, and she only has 289 torpedo stat. Wow. Get out of here, Ibuki. Get power crept. I mean, technically, they're different ships. One's a CA, one's a destroyer, and, you know, Ibuki is much tankier. But you get the point. In terms of doing torpedo damage early, Shimakaze has a double preloaded, the highest torpedo stat in the game, and a very, very respectable torpedo efficiency. All right, stats are here. We know we can break 600 now. Let's see if the skills make her insanely broken. First skill, fire a special barrage when launching her torpedoes. Enemies hit by the barrage's slashes take 8% more damage from Shimakaze for 3 seconds. Enemies hit by the barrage's torps are affected by special flooding for 6 seconds. All right, this barrage looks really good. We get 2 slashes. One comes right before the torpedoes hit. Then there's a second one in case that new enemies spawn. That's going to be extra damage increase. Gotta love it. Right before the torps, pretty much guaranteed. And remember, we're getting the new aiming torps in the new update. And then those torps that hit are going to cause special flooding. That means it stacks with regular flooding. Nothing like damage over time too. Very nice. Oh my gosh, this barrage doesn't have a cooldown. This means that both the preloaded torpedoes are going to proc this barrage. That's a lot of early DPS. Man, if you wanted some sort of preloaded early DPS for any sort of battle from the Vanguard instead of the main fleet, this be your girl. And also, by the way, there's a lot of damage in terms of how much damage these do, and it all scales off her torpedo stat, even the bullets. So the bullets are scaling off her 600 torpedo stat instead of a firepower stat, which is minuscule. So that's a lot of DPS right early in the battle. All right, let's move on to skill number 2. At the start of the battle, that's good, and each time this ship's torpedo weapon readies, so this isn't when it fires, this is when the cooldown finishes. For 10 seconds after that, self-damage that she takes is reduced by 15%. 15% damage reduction is great. Of course, as a destroyer, she is a little squishy. So this will help, the 15% damage reduction. Also, self-equipped torpedo weapons deal 12% more damage. Oh my gosh. So this is a 15% damage reduction and a 12% damage increase on the damage she deals from torps. And Vanguard ships in the same fleet all gain 3 speed. So not just her, everybody in the Vanguard fleet gains 3 speed. So that's like everything that you want. Damage reduction from the opponent, damage increase for herself, increase the speed for everybody. And by the way, it's at the start of the battle and every time she reloads. And it's for 10 seconds. It's a long time, actually. This is just straight good. Like, here's a broken UR. We have 2 skills left. She's already amazing. All right, let's move on to skill number 3. Self-accuracy is increased by 15%. That's always something that's very good for a ship that focuses on getting crits from her torpedoes to deal her damage. So you gotta love that. That's an important stat for a torpedo destroyer. Self-torpedo damage taken is reduced by 10%. So she is going to be a counter to herself. It's kind of interesting. She reduces torp damage. I mean, usually when you're a counter to yourself, that's when you start getting into tier 0 territory. When other ships in the same sortie enter the battle and this ship is alive, fire a cross-fleet support barrage. Okay, so she has a cross-fleet buff. That's pretty good. The barrage procs 30 seconds after the battle starts, so that's a late time period. That's pretty late into the battle, especially since she is going to be in the boss fleet most definitely. So this would be buffing your mob fleet. 30 seconds. Hopefully your mob fleet is not taking too much longer than 30 seconds, but maybe it could clear it out. Helps out in some of those harder maps. If the fleet has a destroyer, increase the fleet's destroyers torpedoes by 10% in the battle. So it's a cross fleet buff. Totally, it buffs the destroyers torpedoes in the other fleet. It also buffs by giving a barrage with 15 torpedoes. That is a full screen clear right there. So if you need to clean anything up 30 seconds after the battle, that's a lot. This is going to be pretty good, I imagine, in the later rounds. I assume that this is going to be relevant for World 14. Of the 3 skills, this is probably the weakest, but it's certainly very good. So now we have a bunch of cross-fleet buffs. You have Tosa, you have Shinano, you have New Jersey, and you have Perseus. Wow, UR's getting a cross-fleet buff seems to be just kind of the standard right now. Anyway, that's her 3 skills. She also has this all-out assault. Usually all-out assaults are just some extra DPS. I don't spend too much time talking about them. But holy crap, this is a lot of very targeted damage. Very good all-out assault. It's also a long time period. So if you're in a situation where you have like new enemies spawning, that long duration is going to help. And it obviously has torps in it, because why not? Overall, this ship is really, really good. It's going to be interesting to see if her survivability is going to be an issue. Even though she's higher health than most destroyers and she has a 15% damage reduction when she reloads her torps, she's still going to be a lot less tanky than what your typical cruisers are going to be. She hits like a truck with her torpedoes, but there are a lot of anti-torpedo options out there with anti-torpedo bulges, as well as a lot of the Italian ships having their anti-torpedo mechanic. And since Italian is the meta right now, we'll have to see if she makes an impact in PvP that way. However, for PvE, I'm pretty sure she is going to be one of the best speed boss clearing ships in the game. This is a must pick up, and that's even before knowing what World 14 does, which I assume is going to be more heavily geared towards anti-submarine warfare and just yeah, she's a must pick up for PvE, and I think she's going to probably make an impact in PvP too. That's to be seen, but most definitely this is a must pick up because bossing, this is the best. All right, let's move on to the aircraft carrier. This is the one that I was the most excited about after that. Let's see what she brings. Katsuragi, here we go. Medium armor, so that's not great. The health is not too great. Her aviation is nothing to get too excited about. It's worse than Centaur's. She does have a 3-2-3 loadout, so she gets the extra torpedo bomber. That's some extra damage, extra crash damage as well. She does have torpedo efficiencies focusing on those torpedo bombers at 135%. Overall, stats-wise, she's nothing special. She's going to be better than the old ships, but with the power creep that's kind of coming, she's just kind of middle of the line. Let's see if the skills make any difference here. Self-accuracy is increased by 15%. That's kind of nice. Make sure that her bombs are going to hit and potentially crit. When she launches an airstrike, she's going to launch an extra barrage planes. They reduce all enemies' reload and accuracy by 15% for 8 seconds. So she's actually debuffing the enemies. It's been a while since we've seen that. Amagi obviously is a ship that does that. The debuffs are on reload and accuracy, so that's not particularly the damage dealing stats. So this is all right. The barrage here actually has flower petals dropping. It's really pretty, actually. It's actually going to be good for mobbing. It's going to take out the whole screen there for low level enemies that it can kill with these little petals. It does have some extra planes here. Overall, this skill is meh. I mean, it helps clear some mobs. We'll see what her second skill is. Self-carrier detection gauge maximum is increased by 15 points. So this is the mechanic where your carriers are hidden until they're revealed by enemies, usually enemy planes. She's going to be a super hidden carrier. It's going to be harder for the enemy to detect her. I'm not exactly sure how impactful this is going to be, but right off the bat, it doesn't seem to be that impressive to me. It does mean there's a situation where this skill allows her to keep her aviation damage buff from the hidden mechanic when she otherwise wouldn't, but let's see what the rest of the skill does. Self-aviation damage taken is reduced by 10%. I would have liked to see damage dealt increased by 10%, or this should have just been damage taken in general reduced by 10%. She's not really that tanky by herself anyway. 10% less damage wouldn't have made her that tanky, and this only applies to aviation damage. And it's not like she's specializing in reducing aviation damage either. Her anti-air is not that great, and her aviation's not that fantastic either. Anyway, let's finish this skill. If there are at least 3 Japanese ships in the fleet, this should include herself, so 2 others. IJN ships in the fleet take 10% reduced aviation damage. That will stack with the first part of the skill, so she's going to reduce it by 20% for herself and 10% for everyone else. So this is kind of a counter for IJN to deal with triple carrier fleets. I mean, I guess this carrier somewhat disappointing. I feel like she kind of has a niche that is her reducing aviation damage taken, but I don't know. She does not excite me. I was kind of excited for her. She seems kind of disappointing, but that's okay. She does have a place in the mob fleet. She does reduce aviation damage. I do think that if World 14 is going to be more plain hell, she's going to help the IJN faction deal with that, especially in the mob fleet. So she could be a mob fleet ship for the IJN clear for World 14, because before World 13 was usually going to be cleared by like HMS and USS. So this kind of helps IJN there. So it does fill the need for the IJN faction to reduce aviation damage taken. So for those of you who want to be mono fleet clears of like World 13, World 14, this is a ship that you should pick up. Otherwise, I don't think she's going to be used that much outside of that. She feels kind of meh. All right, let's move on to the heavy cruiser, who is going to be available as a drop from D3 as well as in the shop. So right off the bat, I see that she's a torpedo heavy cruiser, and that's not a good sign, but that's not unexpected. Most Japanese heavy cruisers have the torpedo slot instead of the auxiliary gun slot. Stat-wise, I'm not all too impressed either. She's not super tanky. She does look like she's focused on torpedoes. She's the second highest torpedo stat of all heavy cruisers, behind Ibuki. Her torpedo efficiency is also not bad with 175%, although her anti-air is pitiful. Stat-wise, she's looking very similar to kind of a weaker Ibuki, but we'll see if the skills make any difference here. Also note she doesn't have a double preloaded like Ibuki. Skill number 1, and holy crap, this is a long skill. At the start of battle and every 20 seconds afterwards, so that's really nice. Reduce self-speed by 5% for 3 seconds, so she's gonna get slower, and fire a special barrage. The barrage scales from her firepower, which of course is higher than her torps, but it's not very impressive. So let's take a look at that barrage. Oh, it has seaplanes. It has 2 seaplanes in it. They drop bombs, and those seaplanes are going to reveal. So this is actually pretty good. This is like a preloaded airstrike from your Vanguard. So this is like a replacement for Acula, kind of. I don't think alone this will reveal because it's only 2 planes. We'll have to see and test that out over the coming week. But it does actually help reveal, especially as more ships are getting better AA and they can stay hidden for longer. I do like that. That makes sense though. Historically, she did have the seaplanes a lot using for scouting. So the fact she gets 2 of them to reveal other people, that's pretty good. Let's keep up with the rest of this skill. Enemies hit by the barrage seaplanes bombs have a 30% reduced speed for 5 seconds. So she slows them down. And they're also afflicted by a random debuff that lasts for 10 seconds. Either their aviation is reduced by 10%, their accuracy is reduced by 10%, or the damage that they deal is reduced by 10%. Obviously, that last one is probably one of the best, although reducing their evasion can really help out in getting your backline to hit. Overall, these seaplanes look pretty good. Slows them down and gives them a debuff. It also reveals them if they're a carrier. In PvP, of course. Finally, still on skill number 1, though. If there is an IJN carrier alive in the fleet, she's in when the barrage triggers. The barrage's seaplanes bombs have a 50% chance to inflict additional debuffs for 8 seconds. This additional debuff is an aviation damage taken is increased by 6%. So if you put her with the Katsuragi that comes in this event, she's going to have a 50% chance to inflict extra aviation damage. Of course, you're going to actually probably pair this with Shinano, which is amazing. Also, all you need to do is have Shinano in the fleet. This is aviation damage taken by anyone, so even if you have like an Ark Royal, a Centaur, and a Shinano, this will proc, and all of their aviation damage is increased. This is actually a really good skill. I really like this skill. It goes with kind of her historical themes. It's actually pretty good. It has a lot of support in it that I like. This is a good skill. This skill alone could actually cause her to be used. Let's move on to skill number 2. Self-damage taken is reduced by 20%. That's just it. Okay, I mean, take what I said about her not being that tanky before and scratch that. 20% damage reduction means that she's going to be way more tanky than any of the other ships in her stat class. It's not going to mean that she's like the most tanky. Obviously, Anchorage and Agir and those like tier 1, tier 0 ships are going to be better. But this actually allows her to stick around for a while and makes her pretty beefy. And if you are in PvE, this will probably allow her to be used in any of the worlds that you need. So you don't have to worry about that. You can focus just on her offense. I mean, yeah, that's just raw, really basic, but amazing. When the speed of this ship is reduced by its own skills, which, you know, happens from the skill number 1, when she procs, she reduces her speed. She gets evasion rate plus 10%. Okay, that's not evasion, that's evasion rate. I didn't even finish this skill, and I was talking about how tanky she is, and now she gets evasion rate. That is amazing. So she gets damage reduction 20%, evasion rate 10%, and it just happens every time that she procs her little skill, which slows her down, which happens at the start of the battle and every 20 seconds afterward. Very nicely, and that's not even the whole skill yet. And there's more. 70% chance to trigger when she takes damage. 70% chance? That's a lot. She's going to be taking a ton of damage. This is going to proc like all the time. Self speed is reduced by 10%. Okay, so remember what I said about it happening at the start of the battle and every 20 seconds? Scratch that. It's happening 70% chance every time she takes damage. Every time? That means she's going to be under the evasion rate buff like most of the battle. Okay. On top of that, she gets a self reload, firepower, and evasion stat buff by 20%. These buff numbers are so high. They last for 7 seconds, and it has a 10-second cooldown. All right, that means that for the most of the time while it's on cooldown, the effect is going to be active, and then for 3 seconds it's not, and then it's going to proc again because it's 70% chance, and it's every time it's taking damage. So she's going to have this all the time. So she's going to slow herself down, so I think that is something we need to consider. It's kind of a fun, unique mechanic for her, so she slows herself down. She has some airplanes. I actually really like the way they design this ship. I think it's pretty good. Of course, we can't forget about the all-out assault. It's pretty basic, just HE straight ahead. You know, not as good as the other barrage that she has for skill number 1. But overall, I really like the design of this ship in terms of how they took how she worked historically and how they used her in here, gave her own special mechanics. I think this is a pretty big pickup. I think like most people should pick this ship up. I think there's a lot of potential for this to have a niche best in slot. Honestly, what other Vanguard ship can reveal the enemy backline right off the bat? Yeah, this is probably a must pick up too. This ship is more impressive than the carrier was, and I was not expecting that, especially since it's in the shop. So this is like, should be guaranteed for you guys to pick up. Okay, let's move on to the elites. Light cruiser Yura. Stat-wise, she's, well, if I say elite quality, some of you might mistake that as good. She doesn't have 165% torpedoes. I guess she's kind of going for a torpedo thing, but she is an elite with low stats. So she's going to need some special skill to make her relevant. Let's see if she's got any. Self, firepower, anti-air, and anti-submarine warfare is buffed by 15%. I mean, if you could pick 3 stats this ship doesn't probably care about, it's those 3. Okay, I mean, whatever, we'll take the stat boosts. At the start of the battle, if there's any IJN destroyers in the fleet, heal the lowest HP percent Vanguard by 3% max HP every 18 seconds, and it max triggers 4 times per battle. So she does have a heal. It heals right at the start of the battle, so that is actually kind of nice. It heals 18 seconds afterwards, so that means it probably will actually work twice if she's in the mob fleet. 4 times per battle, that's not really too bad of a restriction because it's probably not going to happen. 3%'s not nothing, and so it's going to be like 6% every battle. It does lock you into using an IJN destroyer, but we do have some good ones. Kitakaze and Suzutsuki are pretty good, and they got a lot better with the new torpedo buffs. They were probably the biggest winners of any of the ships. Of course, you have your traditional IJN torpedo destroyers, and I mean, did you not forget Shimakaze is an IJN destroyer? Plus, we got 2 more IJN destroyers to go over later in this video, so we'll see if they have any impact here. She's a healer, so that puts her in the healer category. It's kind of unique. If there aren't any IJN destroyers, so let's see what it does. Increase her self torpedo stat by 15% and a 70% chance to fire a special barrage. This barrage is a torpedo barrage. It's kind of like aimed awkwardly. I'm not a huge fan of this barrage. The 15% torpedoes is kind of nice, but realistically, if you're going to be using this ship, you're going to use it for that heal. So she really is going to want that Japanese destroyer in the fleet. All right, let's move on to skill number 2. IJN destroyers in the fleet gain 10% torpedoes and reload, as well as 20% anti-air. Simple, short, and sweet. Just buff all the IJN torpedoes in the stats they need by a little bit, and anti-air, actually, which might be important for World 14 if they're trying to get them in here. here. Last up, we have the all-out assault. It's nothing special. It's just kind of this short little, there's not even torpedoes in it. Overall, this ship is not that exciting. It does have a heal that does proc at the beginning of a battle, so I could see people using it. It's not completely useless, so pick it up if you don't have good healers, if you're a newer player especially and you're lacking some of the healers around. For all of you who don't have Ryoho or Perseus, this is going to be kind of nice. But I think in terms of torpedo light cruisers, we have so many good options. Jinsu no Shiru, like this one is really going to be only used for that heal if you can find a purpose for that. But that's okay. We don't have to have our elite destroyers do good things all the time. This ship actually designed fine in my opinion. Although if you miss it, it's probably not the biggest deal, especially if you have other options to heal your ships. All right, moving on. We have IJN destroyer Umikaze. She's an elite as well, and those are some elite destroyer stats. Not going to spend too much time on them. She's focused on torpedo damage though, and actually not too bad. 494 and 170%. If I just didn't get done reviewing Shimakaze's insane power creeping torpedo stats, this actually wouldn't feel too bad, but let's see what we got. While alive, all destroyers and light cruisers in the fleet gain 10% accuracy and torpedo crit rate. Okay, so she gets a universal buff to a wide range of ships, so that's kind of all right. It is accuracy and torpedo crit rate, so it's just going to affect how often the torpedoes can hit. This is not going to get this ship into the meta, but let's see what skill number 2 has. On launching torpedo weapons, self-evasion stat plus 15%. We literally just got done talking about a ship that does evasion rate plus 10%, so and this ship already has good evasion, so the diminishing returns are pretty high on that. Self-torpedo damage taken reduced by 15%, lasts for 10 seconds. Both of these proc when she launches torpedo weapons, so only part of the time. I mean, she's light armor and fast with high evasion. Torpedo damage is not what she cares about. I mean, I guess everybody cares about torpedo damage now that Shimakaze is around, but realistically, meh. The all-out assault doesn't do anything special for me. This ship is waifu over meta, definitely. Moving on to IJN destroyer Yamikaze, another elite. Stat-wise, she has less torpedo stat, more firepower than our last elite destroyer, but overall looking pretty similar. A little bit more anti-sub, like, you know, they're pretty similar though. Efficiencies are exactly the same. Skill number 1, self-firepower and anti-submarine warfare plus 15%. Damage dealt against destroyers increased by 20%. So this ship, honestly, you know, she's got a good anti-sub. She buffs it. She deals damage to subs. I think maybe she can start competing with Cooper, depending on what the rest of her kit looks like. And if the rumors about World 14 having sub bosses are true, maybe that's important. I don't know. Self-damage taken from submarines increased by 5%? But why? But why though? Like, why? Like, this ship isn't that busted that you need to like balance her with that. Why does she need to take more damage from submarines? She has anti-submarine warfare and she deals more damage to submarines. I don't know, her historical thing, maybe she has something where she was sunk by a submarine. I really hope that's the case, but at least in terms of just like balancing the ship, I don't know why they need to put that in. So tell me in the comments if there was something about her historically where this is like makes sense and is relevant, and then I'll be like, oh, that makes sense and I like that. But otherwise, that's just kind of whatever. At the start of the battle, if there are 3 Vanguard ships, so you can't use her in 1-1 mobbing. Self-torpedo stat till us 10%. Okay, I mean, that's not that important for this ship, so I guess you can if you want. This ship's not that great either, is it? Let's look at skill number 2, see if that changes anything. Torp command destroyers. 15% torpedo stats to destroyers. Command skill stacking rules. Okay, so she buffs destroyers by their torpedo stat. I mean, in theory, she's in the small range of ships that can deal with submarines. I still think that like Cooper and the Alan Sumner stuff are gonna probably be like what your go-to is in that situation, but you know, maybe I'd probably pick her up just to be safe. All right, so we have a cool event. I'm pretty happy with that. Shimakaze is amazing. She's a must pick up, and she kind of defines what it means to be a torpedo destroyer these days. Yudachi's retrofit isn't coming in this update. She comes later, so we'll see if, you know, Yudachi puts any pressure on Shimakaze. But this is the new standard for a UR destroyer, so we'll see if Yudachi lives up to that when she comes soon. Luckily, there is a pity of 400 cubes to get her. So if you have over 400 cubes, you don't have to worry about gacha. For those of you who aren't there yet, I wish you the best of luck. Also, this event is pretty friendly because not only is there a pity for the UR, but the other ship that I would say is most important to pick up, Chikuma, is going to be a drop from D3 and is also going to be in the event shop. So easy to pick up. Katsuragi was kind of a disappointment. She's really focused on as an anti-air carrier, but I don't know. She's like okay. Yura's okay as well. And then the two elite destroyers are mostly collection tier. I mean, Yamikaze is potentially like somewhat useful if you haven't picked up like Cooper or something up yet. So newer players, if you don't have like Cooper or something, you might want her for the off chance that anti-submarine warfare becomes important all of a sudden. Overall, a fun set of ships. But that isn't all that this event brings. It brings the 610mm quintuple torpedo mount. Man, this does a lot of damage. It's going to be the highest damage torpedoes out there. With all the new buffs, I imagine this is going to be the best. It's hard to tell because the whole torpedo meta is changing with all the changes they're doing to torpedo mounts as well as destroyers. But I imagine this is a must pick up. There's no reason you shouldn't pick this up. A lot of damage coming. We've known about it for a while though. In terms of maps, it's all pretty basic. You're going to farm in D3. Chikuma's going to drop there. Levels needs to be over 100. Aviation needs to be over 1700. Evasion needs to be over 800. In your first fleet, you're going to be limited to 2 carriers, a light cruiser, and a destroyer. In your second fleet, you're going to be limited to a battleship, a heavy cruiser, and a destroyer or a light cruiser. Nothing too special from the drops. Just get your points, do your EX mode, do your SP mode. That's it for the event. I'm excited. Come join me on my live stream. This should take you to the page so you can set yourself a reminder. Join me on the live stream as we're going to do the polls right off the bat. And then I'll also be doing a live stream with the EX mode on Friday. Because it's a new event, you're going to have half the day and half opening up tomorrow. So if you want to join that, please do. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you very shortly.